To make kids' lives healthier, they have to eat better food. And I think one way to get kids to eat great food and healthy, nutritious food is then have them eat that food while they're at school. So working with different schools to have programs that teach kids about fresh food and nutrition, and also working with those schools to be able to provide that food is something that's just urgent. Kids' health matters because when they're fed properly and they have the right nutrition, their outlook on life is better. Mentally, they're ready to go through a day of school. I think we have to make food cool, and I think that food television is doing just that. I mean, kids now can watch TV and be educated about where their food comes from, and I think we are starting to tip the scale a little bit to where eating healthy, nutritious food is cool. I think if we want happy, smart, kids that are integrated into doing great things for our society, it's going to start, it has to start with healthy foods.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Jim Salas and Nicole Keith, who are going to lead us in a brief activity break.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Salas. Everybody have a great lunch? Ready to move just a little bit? Okay, I know we're going to treat you gently because we know it's just after lunch. We're going to do 3 minutes of activity, an instant recess. Instant recess was developed by Dr. Tony Yancey, a physician, poet, multi-talented woman who sadly and tragically passed away last year. But we're going to honor her memory and show what can be done by integrating activity into daily life. So we encourage you to adopt instant recess into your meetings. We encourage you to create your own instant recess video, and you can put it on the Instant Recess YouTube, and other people can use it. So Nicole Keith is going to help me. She's coming out here early as a preview. She'll be on the next panel. And anybody else? Okay, Sharon, you want to come? Okay. All right, so I invite you to rise and let's experience 3 minutes of an instant recess. Let's go.
All right, brothers and sisters, it's time for an African dance liftoff. Get out of those chairs and get ready to move. All right, our first line of instruction is we're going to go ahead and give ourselves plenty of room to the sides, back and front. In African dance, we're going to use the energy from each other to create a positive environment for exercise. So we want to knock out our fellow exercises with a punch or a kick. Okay? Here we go. Left and right. Just like so. Good. Both at the same time. There we go. Good. Now that we're warmed up, we're going to go ahead and start our exercises. Our first one is called Beat the Drum. What we're going to do is we're going to change our march into a dip and a tap. So you're dipping at the knees and then tapping with your heel. Side to side. Dip, tap, dip, tap, dip, tap, dip, tap. Just like that. Now with the arms, they're coming up right to chin level. What you're going to do is each tap of the heel, you're going to beat a big imaginary drum right in front of you. Here we go. Hit the drum. Beat. 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 Good. Beat. Beat that drum. Now that you got the movement, add a little fun. Little body roll. Good. Couple more times. One more time. March it out. All right. Our next exercise
That was beating
is
the
called
drum, not
heart
your
stopper.
neighbor, you know.
What we're going to do with this one is we're bending from our waist. Make sure to keep a lot of tightness in your stomach to protect your lower back. Going to get in our little crunch down position. Our arms are going to shoot right out in front of us. You're going to feel a nice stretch in the sides. Then you're pulling it back in and straightening it up. Reach out, pull back in. Off for the harvest, bring it in. And in, out, and in. That's it. Out, in, good. Keep going. Couple more times. Last one. March it out. All right, everybody doing okay?
How y'all
Very
doing?
good. Now it's time to really
Okay,
get moving. We're
okay,
gonna
I
do a
think that's
side-side
great.
action. This one's
Thank you
called
very
stunt
much.
move.
Thank you,
What we're
Risa.
gonna do is very
And
briefly, we're gonna
please
drop.
do your own instant recess. Who feels better now? Okay.
One change that I would like to see for my community to be healthier, really stores the things that's really healthy for you. It's really expensive and not everybody has the money to afford that meal plan every day. I think you change kids' minds about health by really sitting and talking to them about other options. What's the fun factors you can get out of it, or how to have fun and stay healthy at the same time. We can change the outcome of what the future would be like. Our future actually does have hope.
Please welcome to the stage Youth of the Year for Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Kiana Nolan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like they said, my name is Kiana Noland, and I am the Youth of the Year for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So as the Youth of the Year, I'm the national spokesperson for this great nonprofit organization. So I would just like to share my story with you all. My life nearly ended before it began. I was unplanned and inconvenient, and my biological mother told her apartment manager that she planned to have an abortion. But that same apartment manager went on to adopt me. So when I refer to my mother from now on, you should know that I'm talking about my adoptive mother. Not only was I rescued from death, but from a life of terror. My biological mother used me as a bargaining chip, shuttling me from household to household, manipulating unsuspecting people for money, with the hollow promise of allowing them to adopt me. If they didn't pay, she snatched me away. She later married the man who raped and killed my sister, and the judge deemed it unsafe for me to reside with my biological mother. I'm not sharing this to shock you, but to paint a picture for you of a frightened little girl. This is the reality for so many children Boys and Girls Clubs help each day, mending our lives from utter brokenness. I have always been grateful for my adoption, but like any child, I wondered what I'd done to deserve to be abandoned. I wondered why my biological mother did not want me. I fought a sense of nobodiness that everyone feels from time to time, but I struggle with on a whole new level. At the age of 5, my mom, as a new single mother, tried to rebuild my life, so I came to the Boys and Girls Club, and it was life-changing. It wasn't simply a bridge between home and school where I did homework. I benefited from programs like Triple Play, where every day after school, I was required to go to the gym and exercise. And then after exercising, we would be provided with a healthy meal full of vegetables and fruits and lean meat. And my favorite program was Smart Girls, which is a girls' empowerment program which teaches young ladies like myself to live a healthy lifestyle, both physically and mentally. The club fed my spirit, helped me believe that a bright future wasn't only possible, it was probable. They wrapped me in hugs when my mother, who worked full-time by day and went to school at night, suddenly needed heart surgery. The Boys and Girls Club is my family. I love the Boys and Girls Club because it provides hope. When you enter those doors, you feel as if anything is possible. They've been my family and my foundation, but not only do they help me, they've helped thousands of other children. Without judgment, we are all embraced. So what does the Boys and Girls Club mean to me? That's simple. Everything, because the Boys and Girls Club continues to empower 4 million youth across this country and on military installations around the world. So I'm thankful for all the opportunities that the Boys and Girls Club has provided me with that would otherwise be unknown if it wasn't for them. So thank you so much for your time.
Please welcome to the stage Today Show anchor and correspondent, NBC News, Jenna Wolfe. North America Executive Director, Access to Sport, Nike, Caitlin Morris. Director, New Jersey School of Architecture, Darius Solohub. Program Director, Inclusive Sports Initiative, Institute for Human-Centered Design, Eli Wolfe. Director, Girl Trek, T. Morgan Dixon, and research scientist, Indiana University Center for Aging Research, Dr. Nicole Keith.
When I was a freshman in high school, I played volleyball and I was in a play. And I thought that my next stop was going to be the White House. And after spending 5 minutes with Kiana, my gosh, she's going to like run circles around me in like 5 minutes. That woman is amazing and is so on the fast track to success and is so humbled and grounded in what her background was and what her future is. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm so flubbed by her. But can you please give her a hand? She's been through so much. Absolute darling little girl. So what Joy Bauer does for the Today Show with food and nutrition, I do with fitness. I'm a certified personal trainer. This is my life when I'm not on TV. I live, eat, and breathe physical activity. I love this stuff. I want to know more about it. I don't just work with parents. I work with parents so that they can work with their kids. I work with kids themselves. I do everything I can to share whatever I know about this with them because that's how important I think it is. I don't know if you guys, I was going to say, do you guys know this story my grandparents used to tell? But of course you do, because I can guarantee your grandparents told you too. Did your grandparents also walk to school 2 miles uphill, barefoot, carrying like a horse or something ridiculous, every day, back and forth, right, all the time? I was like, my grandparents are such drama queens. I was like, well, please, I've heard this story already. So I heard that all my life, and I started thinking, what is that equivalent to in our day and age? And I thought, I think it's equivalent to the concept of just playing outside. Kids don't play outside anymore. They don't run around in the neighborhood like they used to. There's been this gradual decrease in physical activity, which has just alarmed me in such a way. Just because we have access to it, we could be outside doing things, and we don't. And I wondered why, or at least I thought we did, and I wondered why. And I think that for kids to be active, everything today has to be planned. There's just so much planning, and for a parent, logistically and financially, that can be really, really hard. We talk so much about making healthy food choices. We have to make food choices. We do. We absolutely do. But if we don't combine those with some physical activity and with moving, you're only solving half the problem. So why start when the kids are 28, 30, out of college? Start now. Get these kids moving right now. Let them know it's important. And it doesn't have to be the same way we're trying to sell them a piece of broccoli for vitamin B. Is there vitamin B in broccoli? I'm pretty sure there is. Sell them on moving around, and it doesn't have to be, okay, we need you to do exercise. No, we need you to go have fun. Go, let me time how long it takes to go there and back, whatever it is. We need to find a way to combine both of those, and I think that's where we start with addressing what the situation is. We're not rolling back the clock. Nobody's walking to school anymore with a horse on their back. We're just not going to do that. But what we need to do is find a way that parents have accessibility and other physical activity options so that we can teach them and they can in turn teach our kids. So that's basically, for the most part, what we're going to be talking about today is making options available for parents so that these kids have a chance to move and start moving now. We have a great panel. I know everyone said their panels are great. Honestly, my panel is the best panel. These guys are the best. So I want to, let's go down the line a little bit. Tell me a little bit about who you are, why you're here, what you're doing, and why this topic is important to you. Let's start with you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I have to say we're probably all feeling a lot of energy after that opening speech. And if anything, it brought home for me that obesity is the beginning. It's not the end of the conversation when we're talking about the power of physical activity. And we've got to feel a sense of urgency around all that it can deliver, whether it's around weight management, to self-esteem, to a shared sense of purpose in the community. We have to feel empowered about all of it. As a parent, it's deeply personal. And I think, I haven't heard anyone yet who didn't mention their child when, you know, we all have our academic
Sorry, I have a
backgrounds.
child. Sorry, I had to mention that. I have a child.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want to be the only one. Now I have a child. Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
But everybody, whether or not you bore a child, everyone has a child in their life. And this becomes a deeply personal issue. And so it's amazing knowing that kids love to move, that to realize how much we have divested physical activity from their lives. We just released through the American College of Sports Medicine and others, I can't help it, I have to give it for you, but the first ever physical activity scorecard for children. We got a D-. We got a D-. And that's just in children. We've also done work to measure how much physical activity has been removed from the lives of working adults. We basically have cut physical activity levels in half in just 2 generations. And I think people just don't wake up every day realizing that you can't negotiate this on a daily basis. So the work that we've been doing at Nike has been in partnership with many of you in the room. Many other people could sit in this chair to talk about Design to Move. But really, Design to Move set out to make the rational, the emotional, and the practical case around why physical activity needs to be an urgent, critical issue. And so we're sort of asking the world to do 2 things. First, create those early positive experiences for children. So Jenna, as you said, they are consumers, and they will opt out if the experience isn't a good one. It was different when we had simply more physical activity daily in our lives. My favorite example is the PE class of the rope. So when everyone sits in a circle and you have your 5 minutes of slogging up the rope, 1, it wasn't fun, and 2, it meant you weren't moving for 45 minutes, you were watching other people climb the rope. In a day when kids were running around and playing outside, I do call nostalgia the airbrushed memory, but when we were all running around playing outside, you could afford to do that. In this day and age, we can't squander that time we have with children that way. We have to give them choices and things that they love to do. And then the second piece is integrating physical activity into everyday life. We've built cities where the transportation agenda is for cars, not for people. And we have stopped talking about physical activity as sort of the natural thing to do. So in terms of where I think we need to go for parents, it does start at home. And we talk about needing to make family time active time. And when we went and surveyed families across different demographics, whether it was by race or by income, a lot of what you saw is people go with what they know. And the time that they spend with their families was eating or shopping or doing things other than being physically active. And the second thing is we have to change the environment that children are in. And the 2 large-scale solutions that we've really been looking at is 1, creating active schools. How are kids moving before, during, and after the school day? And then second, how are we really resetting the youth sports experience? Because the youth sports experience in this country is broken. It is intended to serve elite athletes, and it doesn't really serve anyone. So focusing on those sort of 2 key environments where children are is where we're really trying to make that change in partnership, again, with whether it's with the White House or with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and Aspen Institute. You know, no one can do it alone, but what we do have to do is get unified on our messages. If we're not clear and consistent around the word that we're spreading, we are not going to break through. The physical activity space has been a very fractured space, and we have to change that.
Well, there's pressure on you as a representative from Nike, because as a kid, I was a sucker. So anytime Nike told me to do something, I went out and did it, or bought it, or did something along those lines. But you guys are taking those steps and doing those things and are targeting kids at a much younger age, which is great. I do want to mention real quick that please tweet not only your questions as we move forward with the panel and the rest of the afternoon, but also your thoughts. If you have any ideas or whatnot, to #KidsHealthMatters. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. So start now, but also pay attention. So just multitask. If you can do that, that would be awesome. All right, we next move down to Darius, who is an architect, which means he's a big George Costanza fan because he always wanted to be an architect. Big fan of mine. Darius Solhub.
I have different hair, though, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. He once wore a toupee, though, so a lot of hair.
Any other architects out there? Oh, one. Oh, thank you. I'm not alone here. So I'm the director of the New Jersey School of Architecture just up the hill. And we teach students how to make space. And so today I just want to talk about schools, which are the spaces that the part of the population that we're talking about spend most of their time in, and how you get to those schools. And I am no expert in this area, but I really have to put a plug in here that within my community, we owe an incredible debt to Dr. Richard Jackson, who 10 years ago came to our organization and spoke to and blew us all away. And the reason why this is on the radar screen is because of him, and I really have to give an enormous amount of credit to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for funding Designing Healthy Communities. Has everybody seen this? It's PBS, 4-part. It's a great program. It tells the full story. The other hat I wear here is that I was born just outside the city of Newark. I spend every day here. Welcome to Newark. I am on the education committee of this museum, and when it was founded in 1909, its mission was to do exactly what we are doing here today. We like to say here from Newark what Ken Gibson in 1970 said, that wherever America is going, Newark will get there first. So whatever happens here is going to go out to the rest of America. When I was in 1974, when I graduated grammar school, I was riding my bike uphill both ways to school, and I was amongst 66% of the population then that walked and biked to school. This is from Dick Jackson's numbers. Today, that's at 13%, right? It's kind of a scary thing. It's climbed back up to 17% because of safe streets to schools, but there's a long way to go. The good news here is that everything that we teach in schools of architecture and planning, smart growth planning, is completely aligned with the public health side of it. That's the really good news. The bad news is that that is, in many ways, a kind of orthodoxy that comes out of schools, and when you go to communities, disadvantaged communities, food deserts, that message rings hollow. Manoj this morning spoke about the white man's burden being felt of sending this message and bringing that to communities. It's not just, white males. It's everyone in this room. If you went into a community to try to bring this message, you're going to receive blank stares. And that's a big issue. And why is that? Well, the kinds of smart growth planning that's happening is leading to urban development that leads to gentrification. It changes the nature of communities. It's treated as being something hostile. And that's one of the issues, that is one of the complicated problems that Leslie Crutchfield said this morning that we have to reckon with. I'm going to get back to that a little bit later. So safe streets to schools, how to get there, how to do it, we have to overcome all sorts of fears. And how you do that really is a community issue. It's an issue that we like to say in the fancy word of the Academy of agency. Somebody has to take agency over doing that. Who are agents of this? That crossing guard, right? They stand on the corner. They let people go. They can see the other crossing guard down the road. It's a beacon. They lead people to schools. Let's get into the school for a second. The one thing I want to talk about are stairs. Stairs are dangerous, right? Stairs are dangerous. 1 million people in the US injure themselves on stairs every year. The next, that's the second to automobile injuries, right? They're dangerous things. What does that mean? Well, when you're an architect and you're trying to design schools, the underwriters out there are telling you that schools are dangerous. That's why we have so many schools that are one level, right? That's kind of crazy. I went to a school where I had to climb 5 flights of stairs. Every flight of stairs is 5 calories. So when we built schools here 20 years ago in New Jersey, we really had to fight to get over those codes to make those schools something that you could go and really exercise while being. The school is your stairmaster. And it's something that we often forget. So simple things like, those design things are critical. Anybody watch Glee? Right? You know that great stair scene? That took a lot of work. That's at Helen Bernstein High School in LA. It's a wonderful stair. That's an outdoor stair, but we need more of those. So let's get back to the problem of cities and getting this message across. Has anybody seen Kill the Hipster? Kill the Hipster, Save the Hood. Right? Sounds really, really scary, right? It's a great video. It was done by Chinaka Hodge and George Watsky coming out of Oakland, and it tells a really sort of interesting message that 2 people, African-American woman and a white male, both hipsters, have to sort of sit down and negotiate this out. And that's where I think, as a teacher and as an educator, we're in this for the long game. We're trying to teach students to become agents of change, that can go in and negotiate those communities. So when you go in to those communities, find yourself a Haley Thomas. They're great partners. Find yourself students that'll come in and they can tell that message far better than I think all we can.
Darius watches a lot of TV, doesn't he? But it's good work. No, it's not an NBC show, which is why I had the liberty to say that, is all I'm going to say. No, we appreciate it. Next up is Eli Wolf, comma, the only other person in this room who comes after me alphabetically, which is why I love him to death. Wolf with 2 Fs, Wolf with an E. So, Eli, take it away, my friend.
Related somewhere,
Somewhere,
in this
somehow,
galaxy.
in the grand alphabetical of life. we're
Universal.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and to share a little bit, I guess, about what it means to be human, I guess is what I wanted to share. I saw this, Kids' Health Matters, and I guess I came up with a few things to share. Just, first of all, kids matter. Kids' inclusion matters. Kids' dreaming matters. Kids' play matters. Kids' innovation matters. So I guess what I wanted to share, coming from a lot of different perspectives, not only the built environment, but also thinking about the attitudinal environment, the policy environment, communication. How do we create an inclusive environment? I think one of the things that's most important to think about when we think about people on the margins, we think about people with disabilities, sometimes we think of disability as unhealthy. And I challenge you all to think about disability as healthy. I challenge you to think about exclusion as being the unhealthy component. One thing to think about as well I wanted to share, something I think a lot about, is how do we look at the world? How do we see people? How do we engage with young people, with our peers, with our friends? What pair of glasses are we wearing? Are we seeing this from a negative light, as a downer, as something you want to stay away from, stigma? Or do we see this as a real opportunity, as a place to be innovative, as a place to be amazing, to be beautiful? And how are we using our glasses? I guess one of the things that I like to think about is how do we have that journey of inclusion? How do we actually go from being invisible in a negative way, in an excluded way, to being invisible in a really included way? So you're just part of the fabric of the community. You're so integrated and so included that you're visible, yet you're invisible, this notion of invisibility that we have as a journey. For me, this process is about this paradigm shift. Over the last several years, as we've been able to see different people in different ways, how do we see people with disabilities? How do we go from a medical model, a charity model, a pat someone on the head model, to actually seeing someone as an empowerment model, as a source of dignity and respect? So I guess I just wanted to close just with a few remarks here to share to start the conversation. Just an example that has really stuck with me a lot over the last year or so. I remember hearing about a school that was having a phys ed and a sports program. Sorry, this is a little emotional for me. Where the program actually had their mascot. And the mascot, and this is what I heard, I saw in the news, the name of the mascot was called the Retard. So the name of the it's really hard for me to even talk about. So the name of the mascot was called the Retard. And so for me, and for people on the margins, and people that want to be included and valued and really feel involved, to be able to have the thought process, to be able to think about that. And as I said, exclusion is unhealthy. But then the ability to empower that process, the ability to bring those voices together, to be able to educate, empower, and to be able to help that program reflect on that, and to be able to think about that word, the R word, just like the N word, or other language that is very powerful in a derogatory way. How do we get people to think about what it means? Again, like I said, what does it mean to be human? So thank you.
So nothing we do up here is easy. you guys come and you watch, and we come up here and we talk about what's important to us. And it's important to us because we feel it. It's important to us not because we're selling you something, because we believe in it. Nobody here would take the time to sit and go through all this and travel here if this topic wasn't important, if this organization wasn't important. So for you to sit here and open yourself up like that and speak so raw and honestly, we appreciate that. I can speak on behalf of everyone. So thank you very much for doing that, Eli. Although no matter what you say, you're always coming back at me as far as alphabetizing goes. So don't even think that you got me with that whole, Morgan, we can all say we appreciate you the most because you wore the most sensible shoes in this entire room. So Morgan Dixon, everybody.
So you'll be happy to know that I have high heel shoes in the car, but I made a decision around creating a culture of health for myself. And I wore these sneakers because I really represent a national movement of women across the country. And before, I actually want to step back a little bit. And I was going to the ladies' room. There's a green room back there. You guys should know that. It's all very fancy. So I was back in the green room, and I had to go to the ladies' room, and there's not a ladies' room back there, so I had to go back where all of the people who are the folks who make this building run work, and they were eating lunch. And there were 3 black women back there, and I hope they can hear me while I talk, because the community that I serve, the African American community, is in dire need and crisis when it comes to the obesity crisis. I was just thinking about how do I introduce my story, because my story is 400 years in the making. So I won't talk about 400 years, although I can, and I will at the mixer. So I'll start from after college. I joined Teach for America, which is a teaching corps, and I was teaching in a history in a classroom in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think about that classroom a lot because I taught 9th grade girls. I think about right now, this moment, the girls who are sitting in that classroom, half of them born in 2000, the girls born in 2000, half of the black girls born in 2000 will get diabetes unless something changes. Diet, level of activity. Half of black girls born in 2000 will get diabetes. So I look at my family, and I try to figure out which half of my cousins, which half of my nieces are going to get diabetes unless something changes, which half of my students that I taught in Newark here, in New York City. I worked in education reform, and I worked across schools, helping principals think about how to bring healthy living into their schools. And one of the things that I realized is that no matter how hard we work as experts, and I actually don't want to say we, because I don't think I'm an expert in health, but I'm nervous today because I feel like you are experts in health, and that there are 200 experts in health in this room. I mean, there are architects and policymakers and funders. There's one of the women in the panel earlier does the food displays in bodegas. I didn't even know someone did that, and that's like amazing. There are people who can change things in this room, which makes me nervous and which makes me pray to God that I say the right things. I am not an expert, but I am powerful beyond measure because behind me stands 20,000 black women across the country, many of who are, I know, among the 700 watching this today. There are 20,000 black women who wear this shirt, we call it Superhero Blue, who are a part of an organization called Girl Trek. And it is very sobering to me, and one of my dearest friends in the world, Vanessa Garrison back there, also has on a Girl Trek shirt. We started this because there was no solution for us, because there was nothing that targeted black women and inspired us to get active, because recreation wasn't a part of our culture, because physical exercise was ridiculous in my assertion, which is, I don't know why I'm on this panel. It was ridiculous to me. I was thinking, I'm gonna go run for what? Because my entire life, and my mother's entire life, and her mother's entire life, we were sharecroppers. And physical activity meant work, and relaxation meant relaxation, meant peach cobbler, meant good stuff, soothing to the soul, meant stress management. And so for us, for Girl Trek, we are a walking revolution. We have 20,000 women who say, you know what, I am worth walking every day. I am worth 30 minutes a day to demonstrate that I can heal myself we are human, we're worth it, that I can heal myself, that I can inspire the girls in my home and in my neighborhood by wearing this bright blue shirt, and that I can reclaim the streets of my neighborhood. And I have to tell you that that is a powerful, powerful movement. And so I'm nervous because I represent, with my words right now, all of those women across the country. So Girl Trek is a nonprofit, and we're excited to be a part of this and grateful to be a part of this. And one of the things I just would like to say is that the root causes of obesity is not our issue. And I'm speaking from me and my family. You know, you said you have to go out and get the Haleys. I am the Haley. Obesity is not our issue. Worth is our issue. Being seen is our issue. And so for the women working back there and all the women who are listening to this, who I am representing, I want to say that you are worthy, and that you are worth taking care of yourself, and that you are worth taking a lunch break. And I have my sneakers on if you want to go walk. You are worth it, because if we can claim space for ourselves as people, right, we give our kids permission to do that. As a former educator, I saw how overprogrammed our kids were. I mean, as a teacher, I was so depressed as a teacher. I was working so hard to meet all of the benchmarks and to try to be a great teacher. And all that stress goes to the kids. Whoever said this morning that bacon is a stress relief, I'm all in, right? Like bacon is absolutely a stress relief. But you know what else is? It's walking. It's walking, it's talking, it's being out in nature, and Girl Trek solves for all of those things. And so it is a simple, simple thing. And I'll leave you with this. We were modeled, when we tried to figure out, Vanessa and I, we tried a bunch of different things. We tried a t-shirt company. What else did we try, Vanessa? We tried a bunch of different things to try to like make healthy living cool in our community. And then we realized that we needed seismic change. And we looked back and said, when is the last time we have experienced a social change that really shook the foundation of our culture? And for us, it was the civil rights movement. And so we looked to people like Fannie Lou Hamer, right, who single-handedly got all these thousands of people to vote by like registering them herself. We looked at all these people across time and ended up at Harriet Tubman. And so I just want to bring Harriet Tubman in the room with us today, because Harriet Tubman said, you know what, I'm over the whole slavery thing. I'm actually just going to walk myself to freedom. Like, who has the audacity to say, I'm over this? And she tried to go with her brothers at first. That was her first attempt, and they had to come back home because they didn't have what it took. They didn't have their sneaks on, right? They didn't have what it took. The next time, Harriet Tubman escaped by herself, and she made it. And she crossed the Mason-Dixon line into Philadelphia. And she said, the light shone over me, and I was free, and I knew how it felt to be free, right, in that moment, and she carried herself there. And so we looked to women like, and then she went back for her community. She first went back for her family. She wasn't trying to be this big avenger, this advocate. She went back for her family first. And so that is our message. Take care of yourselves, free yourselves, then go back for your babies. And so we are trying to create healthy role models across the country by creating walking teams, by rallying people on social media, and doing whatever it takes to get as many people active as possible. And we need your help doing it. Find me. And I don't mind a plug because it's not about me. So thank you.
Morgan, you don't make it easy for anyone going before or after you. And when you get a chance, marry me, because you're insanely cool and inspiring. And I want all of it. I want all of it. But you bring up such a good point, and there has to be a re-education process, and it can't just be about healthy food choices, which is so, so, so important. It has to be about physical activity also. If we're gonna re-educate these kids, let's do it from the ground up. Let's encompass all of it. Let's encompass the food, let's encompass the activity, let's get them to move while they're also making smarter choices. Do it now across all spectrums. Let's start early. Love your message. Okay, here we go. She's a fan of the Today Show. Number 79 in your playbooks, number 1 in your heart, everybody.
That's
Dr.
right.
Nicole Key.
Thank you. This is a really tough act to follow all along, and I am so thrilled and excited. Thanks to the Clinton Foundation for inviting me. And I want to start out, Risa said this morning, and I was like, wow, she's here. There she is. I'm like a fan of everybody in the room, so it's great to be here. But she said something that was striking to me, because as I was preparing my remarks, I was thinking, I'm really worried about offending people in the room. And she said this morning that if you think maybe you shouldn't say it, this is exactly where you should say it. And so when I was preparing remarks, the first thing I thought about was obesity and what we need to change childhood obesity is to alter the way we think about and talk about obesity. I want to be very clear. Obesity is a clinical condition. It's our environment and our behaviors that largely determine our weight. And just like our environment and our behavior largely determines whether we catch a cold or have the flu, or whether we have asthma or chronic conditions or infectious disease, our behavior determines in our environment what we weigh. I'll throw it out there right now. I'm a mother of 4, and my children, because of their heredity, are predisposed to having asthma, to having chronic conditions, and I don't need them. Thank you, though. To having chronic conditions and to being overweight and obese. We come from a long line from my mom and my dad of overweight, obese, diabetic individuals. And I'm aware of it, and we talk about it. And as adults and parents, we have to be willing to treat obesity as a clinical condition and be willing to talk about those factors that make us obese, that make our kids obese, and address them. It should be discussed as a clinical condition that should be treated rather than an insult that should be avoided. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first let's look back at what we've been doing for the last 2 decades. And in terms of health disparities, what we've been doing, we saw this morning, isn't working. So if it sounds like something that we've been doing for the last 20 years, we should do something else. And I love the ideas that are coming up on stage today. We have some great ideas. We cannot do more of the same. It's not working. Unfortunately, most of us who are working on this are not you. We're research scientists and we're clinicians, and we tend to not be very creative people. The solution is going to have to be a creative one. It's going to have to be one that is innovative, creative, intentional, and multifaceted. The good news is we have recommendations, we have reports, and we have research with a specific focus on childhood obesity. I'm really thrilled about that. My concern is that not all communities have the resources to do research. Research is expensive, and it requires lots of resources. The good news is, recently the Institute of Medicine said best practices are acceptable. And so I think that we need more of these panels, more of these meetings, more of these discussions to get our stories out there, to find out what resources are available to our communities. We talked about the built environment, and that's really important. I love complete streets and safe routes to schools, and I love connectivity and sidewalks. What I don't love is that when we get to these meetings, when I get to the places where I'm going to learn or be entertained, I'm expected to sit. We've been sitting all day. Halfway through, I went and stood over there. I couldn't take it anymore. We're sitting up here. And this is a dangerous thing to say, I love all of you. I hate this room. It's a beautiful room, no offense, but I hate that we're all forced to sit. The default setting has to be standing. And so while we're inviting policymakers and architectural design firms, we need interior designers. We need furniture makers. We need taller tables. And we're seeing taller tables, but unfortunately the chairs are getting taller too. We need to have the option to stand if we so choose. And I guess the last thing, I'm out of time, boy, 5 minutes is fast, but I guess the last thing is I had the opportunity to visit a science class, and in the science class, the teacher had exercise balls, resistance balls, you know, the big balls for core stability and balance, all over the classroom. And students could choose if they wanted to be on the balls or if they wanted to be in chairs. I saw a lot of empty chairs. I only saw one empty resistance ball, and those kids were bouncing on the balls and they were rocking, but they were also taking notes and they were paying attention. And we have neurophysiologic evidence that brain waves, brain activity is higher after kids are active. They do better on tests after they are active than when they are still. So we can address physical activity and childhood obesity and improve education. I have so much to say, but I'm out of time. But let's put some resistance balls, some taller tables, and make standing the default setting.
I'll challenge you to a push-up contest right here, right now, Dr. I will get on the floor and do it. Don't even. Don't even. Because if you get on the floor, I'll get on the floor and I won't stop until you do. 5
don't know,
seconds of
Jenna.
awkwardness, we could, but
You
some
already
of us are
told me
wearing
that
really big
your
heels.
limited movement in that dress, so I think I could win.
With all due respect to the wonderful, brilliant work you've done, I will win. Just
Okay.
anything that happens in a gym, I promise you I will win. Anything outside of a gym, you can have. You can have all of it. I absolutely love what you're saying, and I love how honest you are. Yes, if you want to do the research, let us do the creative work. Let us come up with the ideas. I don't want to walk away from here and use fancy words and talk about idealistic pipe dreams, and this is the problem, and this could be the solution, and the solution is in big curvy S's and letters, and we all walk out of here and we're like, well, so wait, where are we? So what are we doing? So what is it? Well, this is a great creative team here. What's the solution? What could we do? Not 10 years from now, not in the works, but what could we actually do that's tangible that we can put our finger on that says, this is what we're working on, similar to what you're doing, Morgan? Do we have anyone else that wants to sort of chime in and tackle that before we get to some questions?
I think a great piece of legislation that's happening right now are joint use agreements, and joint use agreements protect schools against liability. So there's a school in almost every community, and most of those schools have open spaces and green spaces. They have playgrounds. Some of them have indoor, outdoor track or fitness facilities. I think that we need to have wider support for those joint use agreements. We need to let our administrative educators know that they exist and that they're protected and that they don't have to worry about liability. Open the gates, unlock the doors, let the children and their adults come in. There's a place to be active. I want to throw out another term because I've heard food deserts all day long. I want you to think about exercise deserts, where people don't have access to physical activity, or they don't have the knowledge or education or the exercise professionals to help them meet that physical activity level for clinical meaningful difference. We need to get rid of exercise deserts as well, and that's maybe one way, by expanding joint use agreements, that can happen.
Caitlin.
Yeah, okay. A couple things to add there. I think there's sort of two different themes. One is we need to have a cross-cutting strategy around physical activity that frankly, being in a debate around obesity is a double-edged sword. It has been a visible issue. It is one where you can point to the problem. The economics are quantifiable, but it also has put us in a silo where we're not having a conversation around the overall benefits. And I think that's the first thing. At the second time, we should be able to integrate physical activity into strategies that are already having momentum. Huge momentum around investing in early childhood, less momentum in talking about how you get physical activity to be a core component of early childhood care. That's something that we've worked on with National Head Start as an example. I think we also need to frankly make momentum visible, and we need to make our investments visible. It is extremely hard to figure out what's going on in which communities around physical activity and what's working. So before we say what should we do that's different, I just need to know what's going on.
Which brings me to our Facebook question, which you wanted to address as well. When all the major companies and organizations support this movement and all have their own formula campaign for the cause, how do we ever get a unified message? If everyone thinks they know exactly what the agenda should be, don't we need some sort of one big unified message so we know what the problem is, so we know how to go out and seek a solution for it?
So I would say, and then I will hand this over, I do think in some places we really need to challenge core assumptions. A great example is around the environment of schools. So we are starting to see momentum around building active schools before, during, and after the school day. And when partners came together, lots of people have different platforms and investments, but we agreed that the core message, the thing we had to attack, was the assumption on the part of educators that investing in physical activity time was taking away from educational time. So the win for us is the more times we hear people say active kids do better, and I don't care what other campaign you're running, I just want to know that you're repeating the message, active kids do better, and that we have to get people to understand that concept. So I think people can run separate initiatives, but we have to have some common concepts and some common cultural shifts we're trying to drive.
But Doctor, you were telling me earlier, you have a whole slew of kinesiology students. Can it be as simple as making them each, as part of their core curriculum, go into a school, and instead of recess where some of the girls sit down and some of the boys, this is what we're doing, we're playing games for a solid hour, I know you're going to burn this many calories, I know you're going to move around, boom, and that's part of some sort of, I mean, could it be as simple as that? There's an idea right there.
That's what we do. We've been doing it for 10 years.
Well, excuse me.
But we have
I'm
700 kinesiology majors at Indiana University in Indianapolis, so just on that one campus. We send them out to the schools to work with the students, the teachers, and the adults. The cool thing is we have federally qualified health centers, and those providers refer their patients to work out with our students at the schools as well. So if it could be it is part of our core curriculum. From the 200 level to the 400 level courses, our students are required to go into schools and do that work. We also train the students, so the high school students who are interested, like you are, in becoming a personal trainer or a health fitness instructor, we train them so that they can actually lead their classmates and their teachers as well. So I think it is a very simple solution. Their kinesiology is one of the biggest majors in the nation. It's exploding. The fitness industry is a billion-dollar industry. And I would be remiss to mention that I'm a newly elected vice president of American College of Sports Medicine. So we know we have a 40,000 member organization, and we know this is really popular and that our students need this type of training. So if you're looking for fitness leaders, just like the nutrition students, but this is part of our curriculum through service learning, our students are required. They don't volunteer, they have to do it to graduate. If they don't want to do it, they shouldn't come to our university, but I really think it should be a part of every university.
Eli.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I wanted to share,
On.
one thing I wanted to share is how do we really support and engage our localized community leaders? I feel like one of the things is that oftentimes folks that are doing the work at a very grassroots in the community level, that are seeing sport and physical activity in this way, not necessarily the entertainment side of sport, but more the community development side of sport, oftentimes they're very isolated. Oftentimes there's not a local network. There's not a way to gain support and energy and to realize you're actually being celebrated and you're actually being the ones that are really approaching sport and play and physical activity in the way that we see for our future. So I think a really tangible way is that there are amazing, amazing community leaders that are using the power of sport for positive youth development and are seeing the ways that sport can really enhance young people. But oftentimes, from my experience, working around the country, even globally, my involvement globally too, is many folks are isolated. They don't know the network. They don't have a way. I've been in several cities over the last several years, and I've looked for those networks, looked for people to engage. And sometimes it's a coaching model, but it's not necessarily a community organizing model. So it's maybe coaches are getting together, but not a multi-stakeholder network at a local level that's really able to engage together, that share those values, that share that passion for the power of sport and play. And so that's one thing that I would strongly encourage us to think about as we build these networks is how do we really make it localized? How do we think about these learning communities in a way that really supports people? I know for me, I would join them all if I knew they existed. I would love to be a part of those communities because right now, even in the work that I do, all over, I still feel somewhat isolated. Some days I walk down the street thinking, everyone in the world does sport for youth development. But then I talk to my wife, or I talk to everyone else, and they're like, nope. So I think part of it is how do we grain those networks together?
I love the question of thinking about practical solutions because I'm all about practical solutions, and there are a few. One, I don't think activity has to be sport. I think activity should be lifestyle as well. And one of the big barriers across our country for activity being lifestyle really is the built environment and safety. I was floored. We were talking, Vanessa and I were talking to folks in the Chicago Housing Authority who wanted to start Girl Trek teams in a housing project. And we asked, went through a whole litany of things that we asked, and then we talked about safety. And we said, well, is it safe for women to walk in the neighborhood? And she said, you know what? Crime is not nearly as big of a problem as hit and runs. She said pedestrian accidents, there are more deaths in our facility from pedestrian accidents than violent crime. And so some of this has to be a look at our built environment, particularly in poor communities, and making sure they support active living. So that's number one. I also, number two, a very practical solution is asking the people who are directly affected over and over again to take leadership positions. And so I think about people like Cynthia and Jackson right now who meets in her church parking lot, takes the walking team for a 1-mile loop twice every single Saturday. She's lost 100 pounds. It works for them. If I had thought about it, I would have never thought about meeting in the church parking lot because I would have thought myself out of it. What if you don't go to church? What if you don't like? What if you live here, She knew that going to the church parking lot was how she was going to get the most people out. So not only does she have a Trek team going, but they're bringing their daughters, and they're also bringing the generation up, their grandmothers, and they're keeping them going. So this is this like righteous group of amazing women who are walking in Jackson, and you replicate that across the country who are doing it in different ways. That doesn't work in the South Side of Chicago, but Sandria knows what works in the South Side of Chicago. I don't know. I live in Maywood, New Jersey, in the suburbs, and I can't hardly get my team to show up. Do you understand what I mean? And so we actually need the expertise of other people who are not in this room. And it is our job as experts and as leaders to create those networks to be able to hear. Monitha this morning was talking about that from Moms Rising, creating these networks where we can elevate their stories of success. Because creativity is not just in this room. We need radical solutions for a radical problem, and it comes from Jackson, it comes from Sandria in Chicago or Chris in Detroit. It doesn't come from us, because we don't know what works in their communities. And so local leadership is one of them, and built environment is the second. We have to start to think about street safety.
So as architects, we're trained to deal with clients. And Frank Lloyd Wright said that, you know, I have the best job in the world, I'm paid to dream. But you're paid to dream for someone, and that person is your client. What I find really disturbing here is that the client is missing from the room, right? We're dealing with children. And we are all here as, I'm a parent too, and I probably am as much a helicopter parent as many as you are. Are we the best advocates ultimately for their interests? Morgan told me a great story while we were in the green room, that one of the first places you taught at was a school in Harlem that had no windows. So who built that, right? That was built because there was a study, I think it came from Harvard in the late 60s, early 70s, that argued that the attention level of children degraded by 20 or 25% because of access to a view outside. So how do you solve that problem? You make rooms with no windows. Now, if you got 12 kids in a room and asked them, you know, which place would you want to be in, do you think any one of them would have chosen the room without windows? I mean, that's the kind of myopic thinking that we are endangering ourselves with here. I mean, ultimately, the players in this game are not in this room. So how do you bring kids into this conversation? You know, I know this is a road show. You know, it should go out into maybe smaller groups, or think about that, and who brings that message, who leads that discussion. And I think you'll find unity, or you'll find the critical issues that are part of this complicated problem by engaging, you know, the key audience that is not here.
The user expert.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna text my kid. She's 8.5 months old, and she's got tons of great ideas. But she'll be speaking any day now, and I'm sure she's going to be all over it.
Can I just say that I actually think the people in this room have a great role to play, and it's as role models. I really do. And it seems like the obvious, but actually, I don't actually think all of us in this room are living our healthiest, most fulfilled lives. In fact, I think we sacrifice to work for other people. And I think that, you know, James Baldwin said, there's just a great celebration of James Baldwin in the city, and James Baldwin said, kids have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they've never failed to imitate them. So let's give the kids in our lives, the kids in our companies, the kids in our communities, something to imitate. I mean, it's a sad day when we're all tired and fatigued and we're the leaders of health. I find that for myself as something like, I can't represent a health movement and I look busted all the time, just tired all the time. You know what I mean? So a little bit it starts with us. Like, our health leadership is nothing if we don't model and radiate everything that healthy values stand for. So I just, I'm a very practical person. As a practical thing, recommit yourself to really representing and like emoting and radiating all the things that you preach about and talk about, so that the kids have healthy role models to look up to. And I'm gonna be quiet, as a history teacher, I was much more effective as a healthy role model than I was teaching the Civil War. Kids kept asking me what I was eating for lunch all the time. And I realized that it's because they don't have enough healthy role models in their lives. And so let's just all vow to be that. If we don't leave with anything else today, let's stop overworking, stop doing all the things that make us dull, and really, really recommit to health ourselves on a very personal level.
Let's open up to some questions. Okay, you guys are one step ahead of me. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Patrick, and I work for a national nonprofit called the Trust for Public Land. And what we do is build parks, playgrounds, gardens, trails in cities across the country, and particularly in underserved areas. And one of the things that I was hoping to talk about during this panel and beyond is not thinking about the problem differently per se, but thinking about how to create new partnerships, because what we're finding is there's such a demand for our work all across the country, and we can't meet it, but we want to. And so who are the partners? How do we make this happen? Our goal is to put a park or playground within a 10-minute walk of every American. How do we do that together?
You're like the Amy Poehler of that's a great question. You're like the Parks and Rec girl. I love you. How do we address that, you guys? Where do we start partnering? Where does that work come from? How do we start tackling that?
You start by making it easy. It's such a hurdle, particularly for people who are working directly in the community, to have very complicated partnerships, right? Because we're all at capacity, you're at capacity. So we find that making it very, very easy to partner initially and having short wins in the beginning is really where it's at. And so, for example, we work with the National Park Service. So we have a summer park or summer trek series every summer where we take people to the national parks. That's very easy, and we succeeded. Now corporations are coming and wanting to sponsor it. Now there's a cooperative agreement in the works, and so it started small. And a little bit, particularly in kind of a heady space with this fancy stage, we get really complicated really quickly with partnerships. And I guess my ask as a kind of a street worker would be to, not a street worker. Erase that, Mom, I'm not.
Cool.
As someone who's
She said
working,
street worker.
Yes, yes, I did.
Just wanted to make sure.
You know what? Listen, it's hard. All right, so it would be just to make it really simple and easy to partner. Yeah.
Yes, let's get another question.
I
Oh,
just wanna
go ahead.
quickly-
Yeah, Eli.
I think the one thing that I would just encourage you all, and all of us to think about, is try to find the people that are at the hardest, the most challenging to accommodate. So find the groups that are never in the room, are the ones that maybe are the most complicated to actually solve, because those are the ones we actually end up solving for everybody, and kind of this whole notion of universal design. So I think the key when you're building these councils or coalitions or groups at local levels or national is that oftentimes it ends up being the same people in the same room, and sometimes the people that are really out there that you maybe bring up the most challenging situations are actually the ones that you want. Maybe the person with multiple disabilities that really has a hard time navigating the trees and the woods and how do you talk to them in this user expert way to then actually be able, because if you solve that problem, you're going to solve for everybody.
Just real quick, because I love the Trust for Public Land, and the CDC has community transformation grants all over the nation and coalitions that are built around doing just what you described. And so towards Eli's comment, to locate those people, locate the coalitions that are already trying to do that work, because I know that all over the nation, there are people who want parks and playgrounds in their neighborhoods, and they're working on it.
We have a program at NJT called Freedom by Design, which does just that for universal accessibility for all sorts of things like parks. But Habitat for Humanity has evolved an incredible model to build homes using volunteer labor and in-kind support. That also is a team-building undertaking. Houses are pretty complicated things. I mean, they have to not leak, and they have to stand up. As kids, how many people built forts, right? I mean, if you can get sort of, again, the agency of the child that wants to build something, combined with the carpenter that knows how to do it, combined with the insurance underwriter to make sure that it's safe, or the architect that can basically sign off on the drawings, you can get a lot done for every one of those pieces of land, I think, with enough community input that then actually takes ownership of that.
Yeah, I want to add, I think partnerships are valuable, but we all know that they take a considerable amount of time. And so there's one question around how do you make cross-national partnerships, but I also think it's how do we put out what we know in a way that's easy for people to replicate. So Nike's not an academic institution. In helping to build Design to Move, what we were really doing was synthesizing all the gobs of stuff that you have all created into something that, frankly, we understood could make digestible and share with others. And I think we've got to get sort of clear on really what our recommendations are, whether it's what makes for an early positive experience. Hey, it has to include universal access. It has to be fun for the child. They have to be motivated. But we've got to make this digestible enough that not everything is bound by a partnership, but for it to be a movement, people have to be able to see it and replicate it on their own.
Should we do another question? Yes, right over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Shade McDaniel. Thank you all. This conversation is amazing. I work for New Jersey SNAP-Ed, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program Education. Acronyms are crazy. Out of Rutgers University, and I lead up the MVPA campaign, which targets low-income, inactive teenagers. I would like to know from you all, what are some ways that you can galvanize an inactive group to mobilize this campaign for physical activity using practical, real-life skills? Because in the schools, the PE education is more about sports and fitness and those type of skills, and the research shows that it's not being transferred into regular lifestyles for people to be active.
A lot of that is translating it into their language, translating into something that is worth their time, that is fun for them, that is engaging, that is on their level, that is not condescending, that is in no way, shape, or form from an adult. All of those things have to fit into place. You know that. I don't have a teen, but I know plenty of them. And if they're not intrigued by the concept of it, they've got, you've got them for 5 seconds, and I feel like the attention span is really short, and you want to make it important and valuable enough for them, but at the same time, they have to engage. You can't be 100% here and 0% on their part. How do you do that?
We've done after-school programs, and the kids tell us repeatedly, I've been in school since 7 o'clock this morning, I'm tired, I don't want to do it. So we say, well, what do you want to do? And so they want to go outside, they want to play Frisbee, and these are inner city kids, and they were going outside onto concrete to play Frisbee, but that's what they want to do, or they want to play soccer on concrete, they're playing soccer. We had all of these physical activities designed for them, and they didn't want to do them. So we said, well, what do you want to do? Well, we want to eat, so we feed them, so it's got to be friends, food, and fun. So their friends come, they get fed, and then they have fun. And like I said, we've been doing this for 10 years. It works. But they tell us, we don't tell them. And then the new thing is now we're engaging their peers. So their peers are the trainers, are the leaders. And so it's the cool thing to do. And they're not the student athletes. They're not at all. The student athletes are playing sports. They're too busy after school. These are just normal kids who want to be active after school.
I think that's a hard question. And I think, how do you engage teenagers into getting, I mean, if we could solve that, right? That's a hard question. And I think from my very limited experience as a middle school teacher, here in Newark, I taught PE for a little bit. I was not certified. So the one thing that worked, there are two things. One, they need to know you're going to be there for the long haul. Kids are super intuitive, and they know if you're just coming in to save them for a day, if you want to take them on a little trip or something, or if you really care about their health and the life outcomes and their real college preparedness, right? Life preparedness. And so it's a little bit of framing the bigger picture for them, right? So, because kids are smart, and I think sometimes, we try and give them a lot of carrots to do stuff for us, but how, can you make them care is the question. And so I think, right, maybe, right? Because they're teenagers. So a couple of things I tried, practical things, is framing it into a character education context. Like, what are you made of? I mean, Nike does a great job of this. Like, what do you stand for? Do you have grit, right? Are you just gonna give up like that, right? A little bit it's that kind of teenage psychology. Like, really, you can't run a mile? And that's not bullying. It's like, really? You know what I mean? And so it's like, let me run it with you. And so a little bit it's folding in these kinds of tenets and character education objectives into physical education. They marry so well. I don't know why people haven't created this genius curriculum that does that really, really well. Maybe they have. And so that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing I forgot, and then I'm going to come back when I remember it. Yeah.
I just want to bring something else into it, which is a question on Twitter. What are ways to make physical activity more appealing using technology? And I think that's one way in for kids. I have a ton of clients who were doing moderately well, and the minute I started incorporating a challenge or fitness bracelets or something where they could manage and track their own progress, their data, all of a sudden it became competitive, it became fun, it became social. They were able to use the different apps, they were able to tweet each other, progress reports. all of a sudden, kids were engaged. My clients became engaged. Clients that didn't even know each other were suddenly competing with other people. It was an aspect that it was eye-opening for me. It's been around for a while, and all of a sudden, when they were sort of competing with each other, when there was like this technology aspect to it, suddenly it became important. They're on their phone anyway. You might as well add something to it. Well, how many steps can you take it? Well, can you get 12,000? You can get, okay, can you do 14,000? Can you do 14,000 steps a day? 16. Let me hear 16,000. How many push-ups can you? And all of it is sort of entwined on this network. All of a sudden, kids sort of became competitive with each other, and they were using the technology they already had, and it became not fun, but it became engaging enough where they were sort of brought into it. And I'm sure you find this a lot with the technology that you guys use as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jenna, what I was going to say is actually that the important part there is the feedback, not the technology. So honestly, we've got approached many times about the Fuel Band, and we did the experiments with kids. What motivates kids is a little bit different. Fuel Band was really interesting for a short period of time, but collecting a popsicle stick, which I've seen 100 Mile Running Club do, and others for every lap that they did, every mile they completed, that was really engaging. So I think the insight around technology today is that people like feedback and they like to measure their performance, but I don't think people should look at technology as a barrier of I can't run a successful, engaging program if I don't have technology. Analog works great.
I have 3 teenagers, and they're on their phones constantly. Like, hello, can I talk to you? I have to text them to communicate with them. Social networking, and it's really emotional, and the gentleman who sat in this chair this morning said the same thing, and I completely agree that obesity is related to emotion. Physical activity is related to emotion. Kids like to be with each other, and I think part of it is that we have to create a social network of physical activity. Those apps have to exist as well, so that children can compete, because kids do love competition. They do. I have 3 of my 4 are daughters, and they are so competitive. They're the athletes. My son likes to fish. That's how we got him away from the and we live in the city, but he found a pond with fish in it. But I think that social networks and including emotion in the physical activity is really, especially for girls, a way to get them to be active.
I remembered what I was going to say, the second thing. So the second thing is figuring out what they care about and using that as kind of inspiring competitions, right? And so, for example, we do monthly campaigns, and our monthly campaigns are expressly designed for the people we serve, right? So right now, it's Mother's Day coming Sunday. We're doing a mamathon. A mamathon is twice the distance of a marathon because our mamas go twice as hard, woo, woo, right? So we say that, right? And then so women are walking 54.2 miles in the month of May. And now their daughters are coming because they want a free card mailed to their to their mothers for Mother's Day. And so a little bit it's about like thinking about what the values are of the kids you want, and then really, really leveraging that into kind of physical education. And I know that sounds, my kids valued music, and so I played the good music when they ran. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to, it's practical, but you have to think about the things they care about and really fold that into physical education.
Eli?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on technology. I guess for me, there's sort of 2 parts of it. One is sort of you have your ball, you're gonna play, you bring that energy, the passion, so you get people engaged. And so I think that's really powerful in and of itself. I also think that when we think about technology, I guess there's a couple different types of technology. There could be, iPhones or computers or those things. But also, I think there's also a different type of technology, which is equipment. And so I think that the technology that we use to actually bring people together, I think is something I think about, whether or not we do a class where everyone's blindfolded. We do a class where everyone's in a wheelchair. So there's ways to actually think about different types of technology where we can actually make it a realm that actually creates a level playing field in a whole different way. Sometimes you're thinking about how are we going to get this one kid in, A into 10 other X's, instead of can we get the 10 other X's into A. So I think there's many different ways of thinking about the technology that we have at our disposal, and whether that's, with all the social media and all the different types of apps and things like that, or is it maybe some other sort of more basic technology that could actually be utilized to bring people together?
I have one last thing to say about technology. Think about how you're using social media to really create peer networks that are about health and wellness. Every single organization here has access to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And part of the issue is that we use those social media tools to just push out dry health content, right? But think about how we can use that. You know, I've been thinking a lot about pickup games, because I think about what works. Pickup games in neighborhoods work, right? Basketball games. How do those work? One person has a ball, they go, the rules are set, and people compete, right? So how can you translate that to social media, where you have 2 or 3 ground rules, and you create competition among people on social media? It's something that's so easy to do. Just think about in your network, in your field, how can you, even in your office, how can you use social media to create teams of active people? It's a very simple thing to do, and the technology's there and free. And it's something that we've been very successful at doing, and I'm happy to share like some of the things we've done with it. But it's free. I don't know if there's a lot of really expensive technology, but there's also a lot of free open networking, peer networking.
We have to get these kids to want to do this before. I mean, I always say there's 3 things you can never convince anyone to do: stop smoking, break up with someone, and lose weight. I mean, those are 3 things people have to do on their own. So we got to start, and that's why I say start early with kids. Make this a part of their daily routine, not a chore, you know. And then you have to talk to parents. I say this to parents all the time. You can't look at physical activity as a luxury. It has to be a priority. It has to be as important. And like, everyone knows it. Everyone knows that eating better is better for you. They have to know that physical activity is better for you. You combine the 2. You start it at an early age so it becomes part of their upbringing, part of their daily curriculum, not at school, but what happens at home. And it has to. Like, we can't afford it anymore, where all of a sudden you have these 25, 24, 23-year-olds that are overweight and that feel like they're so far behind the 8 ball that there's no way they can even do this anymore. And so they sort of give up, and it doesn't become a priority anymore. And it has to be.
Yeah,
And then I want to take a question right there.
Quickly on that, hearing that, I wanted to echo that we really see that there is a critical window in that first 10 years of life. That, first of all, kids start self-defining around 7 or 8 whether or not they think they're athletes. You may not realize it, but it's true. And if they're not picking up the motor skills that give them that comfort, they're not going to move forward. And the second is they're also making those brain associations of what's fun. If they haven't had a good day with physical activity as a child, that's not going to, you want physical activity to be their bacon. And it's not right now.
So, Sade, I think Jenna answered your question. I think make a game out of it. I mean, I'm buried in a whole bunch of research on millennials, and I can go on and on. But the one thing that this generation can focus on in a world of multitasking is playing a game. And that's the one thing you can't talk them out of. They continue to play. Why not put that to your advantage? Here at the museum yesterday, we were having a discussion. There's a program here called Night at the Museum, which originally was a rental. It then became it was so popular, the museum turned it into a program. What if that became a game? So what if it was something that you played in advance? I mean, you know, kids play Minecraft, they play Grand Theft Auto. Rather than being stuck to the screen takes you outside, the screen leads you, all that technology is there. There are benefits that come with it that, you can create a flash mob as part of your work to go out and run. And there's the sinister surveillance side of that too. It has to be reckoned with, but it's an enormous opportunity, and the technological wave that we are riding now is one that I think can absolutely help us, and mentoring by the younger generation will be the path to get us there.
I want to get this question right here.
Hi, my name is Todd McCormick. I'm the Executive Director of the House Student Leadership Center, a out-of-school time provider for Greater Washington, D.C. I love the questions and love the feedback about maybe changing some of the furniture. I'll tell you one more thing that is working for us, and that's removing the counselor's couch, initiating recreational therapy.
Take it away, guys. What do you think? Could that work?
I think it's a great idea. There was a question on Twitter, and it's related to that. How can we incorporate physical activity into the curriculum? And I think that Jim Salas and the Instant Recess, Tony Yancey's Instant Recess, it's online. Activity breaks in schools. I talked about the standing sedentary behavior. We haven't talked about it at all, but it is as detrimental to your health as physical inactivity. So standing, again, is really important. I think that should be part of the curriculum, that kids have to get up. And actually, I'm going to ask when we're done for everybody to stand up and give Jenna a round of applause, but it's just a trick to get you to stand up, so get ready. But it's just really important to get kids up and moving and to put information all over the walls about why it's important that they move so that they understand.
What you bring up is really powerful because it brings up mental health, right? And there's a reason why kids go to the PE teacher for counsel. It's because there's something emotive about team sport. There's something emotive about physical exerting, right? And there's a release to that and a relief to that. And so I think it's really, first of all, I think it's really important that you figure out when you're doing staffing around the PE teacher that you incorporate in that process questions about character and questions about their ability to kind of field those responses and then build that into the scope of roles and responsibilities for that person. I think that would be a good thing. The second thing is just thinking about, like when we talk about how do we inspire kids to get active, is talking about the mental benefits of it, right? Of doing walk-in talks with your girlfriends, or like, you know, if somebody's having a problem, you walk around the schoolyard with them and talk about it. There's lots of research about that, and there's lots of just very practical benefits to it. So I think it's a great idea. Congratulations, it's a great idea.
I think all I just wanted to sort of say to answer the request that we saw socially is we're not short on bright spots. And the challenge is getting people to follow them and replicate them. So the one plug I will make is that Let's Move Active Schools, if you go to letsmoveschools.org, it's a platform. It's not pushing any one particular program, but it'll let you organize. Do you want to look at a before-school program, an after-school, an in-class curriculum, and give you recommendations that way?
Listen, we don't have to solve the entire problem today. There doesn't have to be one solution that says, oh, 3 + 3 is 6. We got it, we're all done. It has to be particle by particle, and it's got to be really small, but just do a little bit. This is doable. This is solvable. This is, we talked earlier about, what was it, simple, complicated, and complex. This is something we can do. You know, if you don't have access to a playground, well, you can be creative and sort of bring the playground to the kids. I'll finish up with this last story real quick. I was visiting a friend's house, and 2 of her kids were sitting on the couch. One was just flipping cards, unengaged completely, and the other one was on I mean, whether they were 5 and maybe 7. So I took the deck of cards, and I quickly came up with 4 fun exercises for the 4 suits, okay? One was like jump up and how high you can jump. One was see if you can do a push-up. One was a frog hop, whatever. One was like a squat, whatever it was. For the 5-year-old, and I turned the first card over, it was a 5 of hearts. I say, you have to jump up as high as you can 5 times. He's like, I can do that 5 times. Second one was like a 7 of diamonds, whatever that was, 7. And we went through all the cards. We went through an entire deck, and you know what he said? Let's do it again. He had no idea that he just did 20 minutes of exercise. And what did that take? That took a modicum of creativity. That's all it took. So if the parents can get on board with it, I mean, yes, you're right. Parents need to do it, and they need to be an example. But by some chance, if they can't, turn your thinking a little bit. Like, let's get creative. Let's find a way to make these kids do this. And why can't we do that in a school? Why can't you combine a little bit of math with that and turn that into some sort of, and I'm talking off the top of my head, a math and physical activity. I mean, these things can happen.
Grand Theft Auto is popular because it's fun.
Right. And that's what it has to be engaging.
Yeah, we can't have any more dry health curriculum, dry PE curriculum. It has to be fun. It has to be energetic. Yeah.
Agreed. All right, Eli, finish it up for us.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of reflect on that question that in some ways the realm of sport and physical activity and play is neutral. You know, and it really depends upon what we put into it. You know, are we putting in sort of that positive energy? Are we putting in the right parameters? Are we being intentional about how we're constructing the environment? Or are we actually just allowing it to be, in which case maybe there could be some negative consequences or negative outcomes. So I think if we are able to think about sport and play and physical activity in that way, then it can become even more powerful. So I think that way of thinking about how do we layer in the socio-emotional and psychological aspects, I think if that's really constructed in the right way, then it can be extremely powerful. So, and that's what I think about this whole realm, is how do we make sure, how do we guarantee in all these different realms that we really are seeing that positive value of sport, that we're not just letting it be, but we're really being intentional and constructive and seeing that human potential in each person.
We're going to wrap this up right now. I say this to all my clients. I say to them at the beginning, at the end of a workout, I say, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. This isn't going to feel wonderful, but it is going to make you a better person because you're going to sleep, eat, act, respond, all of it. All that gets better. But I think when you bring this down to a younger age, you really have to find a way to engage with these kids. And you have to find a way that they don't know they know they're being challenged, but not in a way that feels like a task and that feels like too much work for them. And I think this is very possible and very doable. We all have Twitter accounts. We're all very, very passionate about this topic. Nobody would be on the stage or in this room right now if we weren't. So reach out to us. There's so many ideas. We could talk forever. Morgan can also, right? You know you can talk for. No, but seriously, everything you've said so far today has been a fantastic idea. I'm sure there's so many more where those came from. So reach out to us. Let's keep the conversation and the dialogue going. We did this with 2 minutes to spare. Yes, we are wrapping this up. Thanks, everybody.